let's now talk a little bit about working the account. That what happens when you're in there on a day-to-day basis. So as you are working your way down the funnel, you're working your way towards a final agreement, which means sort of a final negotiation. And you want to understand these different dimensions of it. When you get into the negotiation, who's going to be in the room? And to what extent do they have authority? Are they just interested and are monitoring it? Or are they actually part of the decision making? If there are different organizations involved, different sub-organizations, do you know what the interests are of that sub-organization? What are the issues that each of them may be aiming at? It's always important to try to understand what is the alternative for your customer. It may be that you understand they have no other alternative, in which case it's about getting the best price that the customer can live with and which doesn't break the relationship, but you have lots of leverage. On the other hand, if the best alternative to this negotiated agreement is something, well, they've got somebody else who's offered something equivalent for roughly the same money, they may be only interested in seeing if they can drive down the price. So understanding what their alternatives are is critically important. And can we strengthen ourselves relative to those alternatives ahead of time? What can we do to either have a win if one of the alternatives is chosen, or we can position ourselves knowing exactly or roughly what those alternatives may be. Understanding where the motivations are, where there are shared interests, where there are diverging interests is important. Where are there potential conflicts? What are the issues that it's going to create for them? Did they just announce a deal with somebody in a rival technology space or in a rival even a rival company 3 months ago, and that's going to create an issue? Or did somebody join the board recently that represents in some way a competitor? Are they going to have to make an explanation to their board of directors of why they chose this over something else? Have we really explored all of the solutions to the problem? One of the most important things that can happen in negotiation is you realize that there is a new business structure or a new combination of products that really is going to solve that problem. Have you understood what that range of possibilities is around the specific proposal that you're proposing? Do we have objective criteria to support our opinions? Can we cite usage statistics or benchmarks? Do we have an understanding of what is likely to be a fair deal in a shared sense of understanding? Do we know what questions we need to ask? Do we know how they should be phrased that uses their language or touches on their pain points? Do we have a plan about who is going to communicate those things? Do we understand how strong the relationship is and what style of communication and how much we can rely on the soft issues in the relationship to make it
Hey,
happen?
Chris,
Yeah.
I hear a lot of fan-like noise. Is it possible that you are not using denoising, or?
Oh, that's a good question. I did turn it off. Let me see, where did my control panel go? Let me. I need to get back to a menu here. Oh yeah, I'm in music mode. How about that? Thank you, Yusuf.
Nice.
Two. Yeah, there's a little street traffic outside. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
The miracle of Babel Labs noise removal. Turns out it doesn't work if you turn it off. And finally, what are the things that have to be settled? Do you understand all of the issues that are there? Or are you going to have surprises when you try and sign a contract because you actually didn't talk about major things? You know, you didn't talk about warranty, or you didn't talk about support, or you didn't talk about some follow-on option that the customer was expecting to see and you didn't put into the negotiation. And so they say, "Oh no, we can't sign this deal. Yeah, we agreed, but I thought we were going to settle this other stuff too." There are some goals in getting to yes, getting to an agreement. The goal is a wise outcome, something that is fair for both sides, because it's got to be perceived as fair by both sides in order to get to that handshake or that signature. Um, you need to keep focusing on what the shared interests are, the mutual gains, the merits, uh, not get locked down to rigid stances. Clearly, in the early days, there's less room for rigid stances because you're learning what's right. On the other hand, if you've done 100 deals that look just like X, you have pretty good reason to think in the abstract that you ought to be able to get to X. But sometimes, if you want this customer, they're not going to be like your other 99 customers. And you need to understand how are they different and whether you are willing to move in certain directions. Um, there's a it's almost an interpersonal kind of strategy, which is to be soft on the people but hard on the issue, to make a distinction between the person who is saying something that you need to push back on and the issue on which you're going to push back. So to find a way to be generous and open and kind and polite um, vis-a-vis the interpersonal dynamics, but very clear and perhaps very unyielding, if necessary, on a particular issue, and not use language that suggests that you think the person is wrong or bad because they are making a hard stand on a particular issue. Of course, you prepare strategically. You know your objectives. You understand your market conditions. You have the big picture of the industry, and you have as much knowledge as possible about the customer. You've you've worked with your team to brainstorm what you're going to do in possible circumstances. If they ask for this, what are you going to come back with? If they say they have this alternative, you have thought already about whether to judge that as a real threat or just a paper threat. Understand which way they could go. Sometimes, and as you develop, you will be able to identify people in your team who are good negotiators, and you will put those people in the key role in negotiation because they're good at it. Now, sometimes in the very early days, it's got to be somebody like the CEO who is driving that negotiation, and they have to train themselves if they're not already pretty good at that. As you get bigger, maybe you have somebody else who's good at that. And it can be a wide variety of people. I remember in dealing with Atheros as a possible customer, that their CFO, Jack Lazar, was a brilliant negotiator. He was so good. And he would get used in the most important negotiations. You know, he did play bad cop, but he was soft on people and hard on issues in a really wonderful way. And he was a really important part of that team. Sometimes it's the sales leader. Sometimes it's somebody else in the organization who has that skill or that personality that makes them good at that. But you also have to retain a degree of flexibility to understand what's going on in the room, to understand when something has been said that opens up a new door, a new path towards agreement, because they said something that makes you realize that in fact that you're not diametrically opposed, that there is some small win-win that you can use as the place to move forward from. Now, sometimes there's there are times when things go bad, and you have this this escalation. This is from the Danish Center for Conflict Resolution. These 7 levels, starting from we just see things differently to when it starts to be personalized. It's not just that see things differently. I take you personally. You are at fault, not that's the wrong idea. And then it can explode. Now, I remember when you always do this. They're no good. And ultimately, if that cycle continues, you get to a place where I just can't deal with these people. I can't deal with this company. I need to get out of here because there's no way I would ever work with them in my life. At the lower levels of conflict, you do things, you cool off, you take some time, you acknowledge the tension, you take the people out of it, and just focus again on the issues. And you find ways to build common ground at a personal level, to build respect at a personal level, separating the issues from the people. If it really ever gets up into those upper stages, you often may need a third party to help. Maybe there's a board member, maybe there is a common senior person in the industry. That's a bad place to be. And you really would like to never have anyone in the industry that you've reached that point to, because you don't know when you're going to want to sell to them again or need their help with something, even at your next company. But in that red zone, these are things that leave such lasting memories that you want to avoid them at all costs. And if you do get to them, find some way to start to repair it. When you're at that level, nothing gets solved overnight. You don't have one meeting and everybody is all hugs and kisses afterwards. You have some acknowledgement of differences, some willingness to talk further, perhaps. But figuring out where you are in the rare occasions that you get into a negotiation that leads to conflict. But you'd like to be not on this chart at all. Except maybe, you're going to have disagreements. I think it's worth $1 million and you think it's worth $100,000. That's clearly a different disagreement, but it isn't yet at all personal. Let's talk a little bit about contracts, enterprise contracts. I mean, some of it's obvious. You want to pay this much, you're going to buy this product. But there are lots of other things that go into that contract that define the playing ground and the exchange. The playing ground may be things like, well, in what jurisdiction, what legal jurisdiction is this done? In what tax jurisdiction? In what currency is it done? It may be also, what are the rights associated with it? You're going to pay me on this time scale. I'm going to deliver things on this timeline. There's this disclosure right. You have these modification rights. You have these distribution rights. You have these use rights. There are a number of things on how exactly it's going to be used. Then there are terms and conditions which control what happens if things go right. Future purchases, extensions, trigger dates, rights to purchase other products at some predefined discount, ability to apply some of the money spent to other goods and services, joint marketing, reference selling, uh, quotes, all about things that go right. What if things go wrong? What's the jurisdiction for um, resolving disputes? What are the conditions for reparation, repayment, misdeliveries? What's the warranty conditions? What is the exact terminology of what effort will go into fixing problems? Now, when you look at a contract, if you were to just measure it um, by by words in the text, contracts are dominated by what if things go wrong. There's tons of language there about about disputes and repayments and misdeliveries and warranties um, and indemnifications. Uh, but that has a few things that matter, but it often is things that are very unlikely to make a big difference. You have to get past them. You have to get agreement on them. You can't create ticking time bombs where your company will go out of business for sure if any one of those bad things happen, even if small bad things happen. So you got to pay attention to not do something stupid within it. But the contract is can be relatively straightforward once you have agreement on the top things. What's the product? What's the price? What's the timeline? What exactly are they buying? And it can take some time because lawyers love to get involved in optimizing the bottom of the list. But in my experience, those things don't matter that much because the likelihood of them being enacted is really pretty small. It's also important to remember that the sales funnel is not a funnel. It really has a really important feedback loop. The left-hand side is the classic funnel, how you acquire and activate and close customers. And then you have customers. And the first thing you want to do is keep them as customers, make them successful, give them product updates, give them reasons to continue to use the product that they have bought. Because if they buy the product and it just sits on the shelf, you lost. Yes, you cashed their check, but you didn't expand your opportunity at all. And then as they are successful with that product, then you start to be able to sell them upgrades, sell them the next version of the product, sell them the product, the companion product, get them to be a reference so that you can get other customers. And so that process is very much a closed loop. And there are lots of things that you can do, especially once they start using your product, to make them happy, make them successful, and make them visible. That will help you enormously.